So I would have to believe with your answer that you're a big believer in self-leadership. And what you're really doing is trying to be intentional
Mm.
in teaching the women on how to be
Yeah.
self-leaders.
Oh, I'm intentional in teaching
So,
everybody that. So when I was a coach, as a basketball coach, that was intentional. And now as I'm that I train and coach leadership in terms of, you know, executive leadership, it's very intentional. The first place we go is self-awareness. Very first place.
mhm.
There is nowhere to go beyond, like everything starts with that. And so we talk about self-awareness and what it is that you need to learn from your thoughts, which lead to your beliefs, and your beliefs are the things that lead your life, right? That determine the way you lead your day every day. So we need to unravel those beliefs that are really hindering you from making your true success in life.
Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self-leadership, leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today. Welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Zach Levy, for another new season. Andy, this is
Season
can't believe it's
4.
already number 4.
Yeah.
I know. And we're on video. This is kind of new and weird and awesome all at the same time.
Constant improvement. That's the name of the game, right?
Right.
Always trying to generate value in people's lives. And we kept getting poked in the side going, when you guys go into video? It's like, okay,
Right.
here we go.
I don't know why people want
Buckle
to see our
up.
ugly mugs, but sure.
You want to see this ugly mug? That's your problem. Okay.
Exactly. So, but always good to be back together.
So we've got a wonderful guest for you today. She and I have kind of an Olympic connection, which we'll get to in a minute. But our guest today is Sherry Winn, and let me read her bio. We'll bring her in. Sherry's the CEO, founder of the Winning Leadership Company, founded in 2013. Her company is renowned for starting an absolute revolution in leadership. Sherry's team of legendary consultants guarantee to bring out the best in your top leaders and make up and coming leaders operate at championship levels. Sherry knows how to cultivate Olympic-minded leaders who motivate their teams to be engaged, productive, and loyal beyond measure. She's an internationally acclaimed speaker, has spoken up to 14,000 people at a time. She has spoken to such clients as Hitachi, Edward Jones, Adobe, Dell, and Anytime Fitness. She's a two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, and author of 3 best-selling books. The latest that just came out is titled 7 Secrets to Being a Truly Powerful Leader, How to Find and Keep the Very Best People While Building a Team of Champions. So Sherry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
For sure. So, Sherry, appreciate you hopping on with us and being here with us today. So, first question for you. I mean, kind of told us life has not been all roses for you, particularly in your youth, right? Um, would you be willing to tell our audience what challenges you faced in your youth and what you really learned from those experiences?
Well, first of all, everybody faces challenges. It's the human experience, right? And our
Mm-hmm.
level of challenges may be different per person, but for you, it's real. So it doesn't matter. Sometimes I listen to
Yep.
other people's experiences. I'm
Right.
like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. And then, I relate some of mine and they're like, ooh. So I think that we have to understand that everybody has those challenges. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that happen to me in a short amount of time, which made, and it's the stacking, by the way, of experiences is what hurts us. So isolated
Mm.
an event doesn't feel too bad, but when we have a stacked level of events, it's what causes that pain to get bigger and bigger. So I understand why people would get to that suicidal state because I was certainly there. And it just came from the stacking of like how it started out as people not liking me. And so at this I was a good athlete, and sometimes when you're a really good athlete, then you get people who don't like you, right? Because especially when it's in your community and it's you versus somebody else's child, and so that started happening at a really mean rate. So when I was playing softball, for example, I had to be escorted off the field by policemen because the fans were so ugly and so mean. And
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, nasty stuff, and my own teammates booing against me when I was MVP of a basketball tournament. So you start developing this kind of thing that people don't like you, and you feel betrayed and hurt in certain ways. And then uh, and my mom, she was my softball coach, but at age 17, she started dating one of our teammates. I didn't know they were dating, which was really strange. She was 40, girl was 17. What I thought was she didn't like me, that my mother had abandoned me for this other kid, so I didn't understand that there was another dynamic, which still, once I got that, was really messed up. But I felt like I was again, not liked and betrayed, and not even liked by my own mom. And so that kind of like that message just kept getting hit and hit again and again and again
Mm-hmm.
in certain ways. Um, and when I was in college, so again, this thing happened with my teammates, and part of it is like as I grew into this idea that people didn't like me, then I started separating myself from people, which made them think I didn't like them. So I perpetuated part of the problem, But in college, it happened again, where my teammates went to the coach and said, "Look, we don't want to play with Sherry. She's just not the kind of person who's likable." And as those things stacked up, I just started feeling like I wasn't worthy, and I started feeling that I shouldn't even be here. Like if people didn't like me, I shouldn't even be here. And that's where like the depression came in, and the drinking came in, and the suicidal thoughts came in. And so it was just one event after another that became so big, and it kind of culminated in 1988 at the Olympic Games when my coach sexually harassed me, and I told my teammates, and their response was, "Don't tell anybody. Like you just got to suck it
Mm-hmm.
up." And so those things as they stack, boom, 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 it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you're like, "Oh, I'm not worth living. Like I need to end it all." I didn't. I'm here. Yay!
thankfully.
Well, did you find that sports in the competition and so forth, even though you were having difficulties with teammates, did you find that kind of a distraction or kind of a home for you where you could find some kind of worth because you're bringing your skills and talents to bear in the
Sure.
game, in the sport, even though uh, your teammates may not have been on board with you. Did you find
Yeah,
some kind of
well,
home or value or something of that nature through your talents and skills in the
sure. Like
sport?
sports are a great thing because it's a great outlet. So, I could be in the gym
Mm-hmm.
and train by myself for hours and be happy. And be happy when a ball went into the basket, and be happy when I knew I was good, and feel that satisfaction of sweat rolling down your body. And then, I mean, there were moments of greatness. I mean, certainly I'm hitting the low points, but um, when I could look back and I saw like there were certain people on my team that were great teammates, right? There were certain people that elevate me. Um, and there were, a couple of coaches throughout my career that were really phenomenal, and they were very supportive. And so sports was a way. And when I got angry, you know, like you could really be good at sports when you're angry because you take it out on your opponent. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, if you channel it
channel it
right.
through. So the sports were really great. And looking back, I don't blame my coaches or my teammates as much as to understand like my part in all that. Like I understand, and they have to own their part, like their jealousy. I can own that.
Mm-hmm.
I can own my part, right? I can own that it was hard to be my teammate
Yep.
when I was feeling like I was just going to get betrayed. So how do you act in those moments? I can own that. But sports were certainly a great avenue for a lot of different growth. And even looking back, like what was my part? How can I take ownership in that? How can I grow? What were my controllable factors? So it was a wonderful wonder. I mean, I would encourage everybody to play sports.
So focusing on you and the high points more so pushing
Well,
you through?
focusing on me, focusing on my controllable factors, learning what my controllable factors were. Uh, and of course, this was, through some of my teammates, which were great. Some of my mentors in '84, I had great teammates in '84, wonderful people who were honest and yet empathetic, really incredible teammates there. Um, and then, I read a ton of, I started reading personal health books. I mean, by the dozens and dozens and dozens.
Hmm.
And so then understanding my part and understanding, how I could focus on the controllable factors and the power that I personally had versus giving my power away to my coaches or teammates. So a lot of that came to play as well.
Love that. And so, can you talk a little bit about your transition from basketball to handball? Like, did you just fall into it? Did it fall into your lap, or did somebody kind of push you in that direction, making that connection for you? How'd that
So
happen?
this is what's so interesting. When people say when God closes one door or one door is closed for you, that if you
Hmm.
know that door is closed because you wanted something else, like you couldn't get to one place without the other place closing. Well, so when I was a sophomore in
Right.
college and all this happened with my teammates and my coach takes me down the locker room and she goes to the team, tell Sherry what you think about her. So they just unleashed, and I was like, well, so I already had low self-esteem, as you can imagine. And so I couldn't handle that. I literally could not handle it. And so I said I quit. And so I just walked out the door
Mm.
and then I started drinking. That was my next thing to do. Like, oh, I'll just drink this away. Like somehow drinking will drink it all away and it'll be better. Well, that didn't
Right.
work. But what happened was one of my classmates said, hey, there's this great sport, this club sport we're playing. It's called handball. I'm like, I don't even like racquetball. She goes, no, 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 no. It's European handball. So you play it on a court like a basketball court. It's 40 feet longer and 20 feet wider. The ball looks like a miniature soccer ball, and the goal looks like a miniature soccer goal. And you throw the ball into the goal. And she said, you get to hit people. I go, what? I get to hit people? That's illegal? And so she's like, yeah. And I said, okay. So they had a club team, and I had nothing else to do. So I started playing with the club team, and I played the club in about 2 months. And they said, hey, we're going to go to New York City to the national tournament. Do you want to go? And I'm like, sure. I'm not doing anything else. I have nothing else in my life. I'll go. And when I was there, the national team coach was searching for new athletes to play on the national team. And since I had athleticism, he's like, do you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. Like, why, sure. Like, we're going to be training for the '84 Olympic Games. I have a chance to be on the '84 Olympics. Yes. And so it was one of those lessons that you learn that sometimes something needs to be totally closed off so that the thing you really want is open to you. And so that was a great lesson for me.
So when did you catch the coaching bug?
Oh man, I wanted to be coach, ever since I wanted to be an athlete. I mean, it was kind of like consistent,
Mm.
Hmm.
because I knew things. What I discovered as a player is I knew things that coaches didn't even know. Like I felt the game in a way that I knew when an offense should be changed or defense should be changed or somebody should be substituted or there should, I just knew those things innately. And so when I was a athlete, I used to write down every single day I'd come home from practice, like beginning with college and throughout all my Olympic career. I'd write down every single practice that we had. So I had a journal and I'd write down every drill we did, and I'd evaluate the drill. Like, this was a dumb drill, or this was a really good drill. This is why it was a good drill. This is why this drill should never be run again. This is, the overall feeling of the practice. And I did that every single day. So if you can imagine, like 2 years of college, and then I quit to be an Olympian. That was like uh, another 7.5 years of doing that. So I'd always evaluated practices and how they could have been better. So even when I was playing, I was still thinking about coaching.
And so, Sherry, why is it you feel that sports is such a great teacher of leadership and really being that team player alongside leadership?
Well, like anything, you can have bad experiences or you can have good experiences. And if you know that you can turn the
Right.
bad experiences into learning opportunities, then it's still a good experience, right? Um, but I really learned that through my coaching, that my idea was how can I impact these young women in such a way they would elevate their life forever? How can I do that? And so it was intentional It was intentional to teach them how to be a good leader. It was intentional to teach them how to be a good team member. It was intentional to get them life skills like how do you resolve conflicts and how do you become a better communicator. Those were intentional trainings that we did to develop our players, not just no for beyond the court. So what I learned was, if you really want to be a great leader, you can't just say I'm leading by example and people are through osmosis are going to get what I'm doing. You have to be intentional about what you're
Yeah.
teaching people. And if you're intentional, many people will get it. Not everybody, but many people will get it.
Who's really wanting to build an effective team?
Well, so the first thing, in my last book, Winning Leadership, 7 Secrets to Being a Truly Powerful Leader, I asked the question to over 200 people, what was your greatest challenge? And over 80% of them said, myself. That was their answer. And so I knew like those were good leaders because they understood that, look, in order for me to be the best I can be, I need to get who I am. And I need to really uncover,
Yeah.
my own weaknesses as well as my strengths. I need to know those. And when I have a weakness, there's two things you can do. Is this weakness important that I improve it? Or is this a weakness that I can delegate to somebody else? Well, you have to get that. So it always starts at that place. And then are you willing to be a lifelong learner? Are you willing to always learn the next thing? And I think that sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, but you don't understand, I'm 55 or I have a PhD or I've been doing this for 30 years. Okay, great. So what you're saying is you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to tell people is, look,
Yeah.
if they're willing to learn, I think that, like, if you're willing to be self-aware and always uncover that next level, and people go, well, I know myself. I've been living with myself. And I'm like, yeah, but I know myself. And look, I'm still discovering things I didn't know. I'm still
Right.
like unraveling stuff. I'm like, really? Holy Hannah, are you serious? I do that? Wow. So I'm still uncovering that because when we live with ourselves, we don't know. We can't see. Like we're just seeing the pieces we want to see. And then we're sticking our head in the sand. I mean, we numb ourselves out so much. Think about how how the average person numbs themselves. Television, your phone, scrolling through your phone, eating, drinking, over exercise. How do we numb ourselves and are we really, really present with who we are? So when we get to those things, we can uncover so many incredible ways to advance and to become a better individual because you can't give what you don't have. And so in order to give more, you've got to have more.
Well, I think it speaks to the importance of being present when you're in your relationships, whether they be people that you're leading or people in your personal life or whatever, because it's those relationships that's holding up the mirror
Absolutely.
to show you things about yourself that you didn't even realize, as well as the power of tools like the 360 review that you can do to truly understand or uncover the things you're not aware that you're doing that's having an impact on people
Absolutely.
that you might need to do some work on.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it takes a true leader to do this self introspection because for most people it's terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we're afraid of what we're going to see or what we're going to hear.
Right.
You get a 360 review, you're like, like, what are the people going to say about me? But, if you look at it as, look,
Right.
this is just information. It's not somebody's trying to tear you down. And if they are, that's them. It's not you. This is just information
Right.
to help me get better. This is all it is. So when I was a coach, the first thing I did, when I was a player, I thought I had great information to share, right? Whether that was true or not, I don't know, but I thought. And so what I did with my players is I let them evaluate me. Like they would write an evaluation down. We had certain questions we'd ask, and then what we'd do is we would after that I would sit down with them one on one, and I'd go through them, and I'd just say, "Tell me more about this." And so what they learned was I wasn't going to retaliate. I wasn't going to seek revenge. I wasn't going to get mad. I really wanted to know what they were thinking. Now, some of those people I knew, no, this is not true. Like that's their viewpoint. And they're kind of convoluted. But some people, like if I had 8 or 9 people saying the same thing, I'm like, man, I need to change. I need to change. I need to evolve. So, learning that was really important. And then, of course, if you're going to write a book, you're going to have critics. Like if you're going to coach a game, 50% of the people in the stands thinks you're an idiot. So, you
Right.
listen to the people that make sense. You can evaluate that. Is this a good feedback or is it just a criticism? So having that's really important, and your ability to grow comes through those honest conversations or the honest feedback that you get from people.
Yeah, I used to. My last question in doing an annual performance review was always, "How can I be a better leader for you?"
Yeah.
Because it may be a communication issue, it may be a training issue, it may be I don't have the right
Right.
tools to do
Right.
my job effectively. I need A, B, and C would help me speed up my productivity or
Yeah.
whatever that I'm not aware of because I'm not sitting in their seat and doing their job. I know at a high level what they're doing, but I'm not in the day to day, minute to minute thing like they are.
Absolutely.
And like you said, it's just data points, it's facts.
Right.
And if you hear this repeated over and over again as you're going through the reviews, you know you have a serious issue that needs to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
dealt with, whether it's pointed at this guy here or it's pointed at tools or training
Hmm.
or something else that needs to be
Yeah.
done.
I always
So,
encourage the 360 review, always. And I always encourage
yeah.
leaders to, with their own team, their immediate team members, their direct reports, like get their feedback continuously, so they know that they can give it to you and they can bring that to you so that you can make changes fast when they need to be changed rather than having people suffer, for 6 months or a year when it affects productivity, it affects your engagement, it affects, retention levels. And so, it's just that, and this comes from confidence, right? You have to have, that's your ability to do the self-awareness. It comes from your confidence to know that you are a good person and are a good leader, even if you still need things, even if there are things you still need to work on. Very important to note.
Yeah.
So we heard we heard about the internal stuff for a leader and building a team. What other imperatives
Mhm.
do you feel like a leader needs to do besides the introspection
Yeah.
and making sure your leadership is on point?
Well, again and again and again, the things that people talk about are communication. How do you communicate with other people? And so, a lot of companies will say, well, but we do the one-on-one meetings and we do the town halls and we do the skip meetings and we do the team meetings on a regular basis, the staff meetings, and okay, that's great. How you do them is the important thing, not just doing them. It's
Mhm.
how you do them. So
Mm-hmm.
what I've discovered, a lot of people say things like, well, my door's always open. People can walk in my door anytime they want to. Okay, great. But once they walk through your door, how are you, I mean, who are you really once they come through the door? Are you able,
How you showing
yeah,
up?
are you able to have that
Right.
conversation? And so a lot of people lack good assertive communication skills. Like they don't know how to do them, Andy. And so when I talk about this, and a lot of people go, well, we have way too many assertive communicators. I'm like, well, then you don't know what assertive communication is, because the way you're reacting right now is you're confusing being an assertive communicator with an aggressive communicator. And so
Mm,
what we have is we have a lot of people that just don't know how to have that interaction because they haven't worked on their communication skills, and they don't know how to have, like, how can they respond rather than react when tough things are coming at them, because that really makes an assertive communicator, right? Most people get defensive, they get mad, they snap back, and that's going to hurt your communication, and that hurts your trust. It hurts the information flow, and so that level of communication is the big thing.
So important in that world to have a culture of open communication. If it's not established from the get go, it's hard to bring back.
and psychological safety, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's communication, but it's also creating a culture and environment to say, as long as it's done in a respectful way, we can talk about anything.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that somebody has to be heard about it. You know, it's just like you
Mm-mm.
said, and it's the information flow. So
Information.
I'm just
Yep.
receiving information. And if you can get out of that, like, well, I'm hurt, like I can't believe they said that to me. Like, okay, now we're now we're now we have to be beyond that, and that comes with that self-development work. That comes with that work that you do so that you
Right.
can to have this communication. Communication leads to trust, and trust leads to, of course, retention, and trust leads to engagement. And so it's just all a big cycle. I don't think that you can have one without the other. They're all like those things that are built upon, those bricks that are built and built and built to make a sturdy building.
Right. So that gets into a whole nother conversation about ego and pride that we've had before.
Yep.
So,
For sure.
but Sherry, this has been very insightful, and I wish we had hours and hours to continue to talk about it. But through your leadership, everything we always wrap up our episodes in the same way. asking the same question. And there is no right or wrong answer here. It's what your answer is, and we go back through at the the end of every season and kind of pick out the golden nuggets, if you will. But of course, our podcast is called Generate Your Value. So we always ask, what do the words generate your value mean to you?
Wow. Well, for me, that becomes internal. So that, if you look at Maslow's, pyramid, and it comes to self-actualization. And when you get self-actualized, what that means is now that ego thing you're talking about, Zach, that's not in play as much. It means that I don't need
Right.
you, Andy, or you, Zach, to validate me. It means that I can show up honestly, right? And I think that still so many people, like the power hungry, the greedy, they get into that, which happens often, right? Let's not kid ourselves, happens often. Well, that's because the person hasn't yet reached that pinnacle of realization that they're enough, and that no matter what is said or done, they're still enough. Like that self-worthiness, that leaving behind the imposter syndrome. And so to me, it's your value comes through that work that gets you to that peak of being self-actualized, so that you can show up honestly for other people and for yourself, like showing up honestly for you, because that leads to happier lives, that leads to more productive living, right? And you don't have to have so much of that negative emotion that flows through so many people. You're just in a different space, such a better space to live in, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more freedom, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of that monkey off your back.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worrying about things. You're not worried about what other people think about you. You're just living an authentic life.
Yeah. And it's great.
Because
You
you've
can
done
stop walking on
you've
eggshells and
you've done all the work to sort of clear out traumas and whatever that are in your life, and you're able to live peacefully with yourself.
Absolutely.
Let alone with others.
Yeah. And what a better way to live, right? I mean, when you're living in more joy and peace and happiness, I mean, isn't that what we're all looking for anyways? Greater happiness. Like everything we do is geared toward happiness. We don't do anything because we think it's going to make us suck or feel bad or depressed. We're looking for happiness. Like even if somebody's happy, they're looking
Right.
for happiness, right? And so when we get to that space, we're better leaders. We just show up differently.
Well, Sherry, we can't thank you enough for taking your valuable resource, that finite resource that you have in your life and we have in our life called time, to share your wisdom with the Generate Your Value audience. And for the audience, we hope that you took some golden nuggets from our conversation with Sherry today that you could use to integrate into your life, into your career, into your self-leadership and leadership. It's going to help you grow as an individual and make a bigger impact in your own world as well as the world in general. So that being said, we're here every week with an episode of the podcast where we bring in great guests just like Sherry Winn to share their wisdom with us in the hopes that we together as a community can grow into the people that can generate as much value in the world. So that being said, thank you for taking your time to tune into the episode. We'll see you next week. Have a great day, have a great week, and we'll see you next time here on the Generate Your Value podcast. Thank you much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at @the_Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.